In the heart of an ancient kingdom wrapped in golden sands and sapphire skies, ruled a man unlike any other, King Ariv, known across lands as the Wise King. His reputation wasn't built on conquest or wealth, but on something far rarer, his unwavering sense of justice. He listened more than he spoke. He watched more than he ruled. And when he passed verdicts, the wind itself paused, as if eager to hear his words. But even the wisest men face tests not carved in books or scrolls. One morning, long before the sun rose, a cloaked rider galloped into the palace courtyard. Dust spiraled behind him as guards rushed forward, weapons drawn. The rider collapsed from exhaustion, clutching a small satchel to his chest. "Urgent message, for the king," he gasped, his voice barely a whisper. Within minutes, King Ariv stood at the top of the marble staircase, his robe trailing behind him like a river of silk. His eyes, calm but alert, met the messenger's. "What news travels faster than dawn?" he asked. The satchel was handed to him. Inside was a letter sealed with the emblem of a neighboring province, Darakal, a region under his rule but governed by a nobleman named Lord Viam. Ariv broke the seal and read silently. His expression didn't change, but the silence grew heavier with every second. Finally, he looked up and said, "Prepare the royal court. This matter must be heard by all." By noon, the grand hall was filled. Ministers, soldiers, scholars, even common townsfolk, all summoned by the king's rare request for a public hearing. Two figures stood before him, Lord Viam, a tall man with silver armor and a sharp tongue, and Lena, a young orphan girl barely 16, barefoot and trembling, clutching a crumpled paper in her hand. Lena was a servant from Darakal. Lord Viam accused her of stealing a royal artifact, a rare gemstone known as the Heart of the Falcon, a symbol of the province's loyalty to the crown. If found guilty, she would be exiled into the desert, a slow, cruel death. "I demand swift justice," Lord Viam declared, his voice echoing. "The girl was found in my private chamber, holding the gemstone." Gasps filled the room. King Ariv leaned forward, his eyes meeting Lena's. "Child," he said gently, "do you understand what you're accused of?" Lena's lip trembled. Her voice cracked. "I did enter the chamber, but not to steal. I was told by the steward to clean it. When I entered, the gem was already on the floor." "And yet, you were found holding it," Lord Viam sneered. "That's no coincidence." "Enough," the king said, not loud, but firm. He studied both of them. Something didn't sit right. Why would a servant risk her life for a gem she couldn't sell? And why demand a public trial over such a matter? The letter had warned him that things in Darakal were changing. Lords growing bolder. Power shifting hands. Trust fading. He turned to his advisors. "I will not pass judgment, not yet. This case will be examined further. But hear me, all of you, truth does not fear delay. Only lies tremble in time's shadow." Lord Viam's jaw tightened. The room shifted with unease. Later that evening, in his private chamber, King Ariv summoned his most trusted spy, a man known only as Kian. "There's more to this," the king said quietly. "Find it. Discreetly. If truth still breathes in Darakal, I want it brought to me, alive." As Kian disappeared into the shadows, the king looked out over his kingdom. He knew this was no simple theft. This was a test. And he had a feeling the real verdict had not yet arrived. Cliffhanger for Part 1. What secret lies beneath Lord Viam's accusation? And will the king uncover the truth before the innocent pay the price? 3 days passed. The royal court grew restless. Whispers floated through the palace halls like drifting smoke, accusations, doubts, conspiracies. Some believed the girl was innocent. Others were certain she was guilty. But King Ariv said nothing more. He waited. Because sometimes, the greatest truths rise not from shouting, but from silence. In the shadows of the palace, Kian, the king's most trusted investigator, rode under the veil of dusk toward Derakal, the noble province where this mystery had begun. Known for his silent steps and sharper mind, Kian had once uncovered a plot to poison the king's wine. Now, his eyes were set on Lord Viam. Derakal, on the surface, was peaceful. The streets were swept, the towers stood tall, and the people bowed with practiced loyalty. But Kian knew appearances were often the masked truth hid behind. Disguised as a merchant, he spent 2 days listening, at tea stalls, in alleyways, and near the servant quarters. And it was there he heard something peculiar. A stable boy named Rafi whispered a tale while cleaning saddles. I saw the steward, late at night, sneaking into Lord Viam's chamber. He carried something shiny, wrapped in silk. And the next morning, that poor girl was arrested. The boy's voice trembled. But I didn't say anything. They say Lord Viam has eyes everywhere. Kian leaned closer. You just said something. That night, he met with the steward, an older man named Bharat, whose eyes had grown weary with guilt. I was ordered, Bharat confessed, his hands shaking. Lord Viam planned it all. He said the girl had seen too much, how he was selling royal jewels to foreign merchants. He needed to silence her, and frame her to keep suspicion away. Kian's eyes narrowed. Do you have proof? Bharat nodded, pulling a small box from under his bed. Inside was a ledger, pages of transactions, sealed with Viam's own emblem. Proof of theft, deception, and betrayal. The next morning, Kian returned to the capital, dusty, tired, but with truth in hand. Back at the palace, the court gathered again. The girl, Lena, stood with her head bowed. She hadn't eaten much. Her hands were still bruised from the guard's grip. But her eyes were still holding on. Lord Viam, adorned in his polished armor, looked confident. King Ariv entered quietly. The room fell silent. I have heard the voices, he began, but I needed more than words. He motioned to Kian, who stepped forward, holding the box. This, the king continued, is truth, written not in rumor, but in ink. Gasps filled the chamber as Kian revealed the ledger, reading out loud the details of Viam's crimes, dates, deals, signatures. Viam's face paled. And the servant girl? Ariv turned to the court. She was merely a witness, punished for seeing too much. Lena's eyes filled with tears. Lord Viam, the king said sternly, you sought to bury truth beneath lies. But remember this, the deeper you bury the truth, the louder it returns when it rises. Viam was stripped of his title. His armor removed. He would stand trial before the people he betrayed. And as Lena stepped down, free at last, the crowd erupted in cheers, not just for her, but for justice. Cliffhanger for Part 2. Justice was served, but truth has a cost. What new danger awaits King Ariv now that he's exposed corruption within his own court? The courtroom's echoes had barely faded when the first threat arrived. A raven, black as night, landed at the king's window. Tied to its leg, a scroll sealed with a sigil Ariv hadn't seen in years, a mark from an underground faction once thought long buried, the Brotherhood of Silence. King Ariv read the message silently. You removed one mask. But remember, those who wear many faces do not fall easily. Silence one of us, and others will speak with steel. You've exposed a crack in the kingdom. Now watch it break. Ariv handed the message to Kian, his jaw set firm. So. Viam was only a pawn. Kian nodded. And someone much darker was pulling his strings. That night, the palace didn't sleep. Lena, now a protected witness, was moved to a safer chamber under the queen's wing. Guards doubled their shifts. Kian combed through Viam's old records, following trails of names, shipments, and bribes. By morning, he had a list, short but dangerous. 3 names. One was a respected general. Another was a royal treasurer. And the last was a prince. Ariv's blood chilled when he saw the name, Prince Akarsh, his cousin and childhood friend. A man who once laughed beside him during sword training. A man he trusted. He couldn't, Ariv whispered. But doubt, once seated, grows fast. He summoned Prince Akarsh to the royal garden, away from the eyes of court. The prince arrived with charm, dressed in blue silk, his smile as radiant as ever. "My king," Akarsh said, bowing. "Or should I call you the seeker of secrets now?" Ariv studied him. "Tell me, where were you the night Vyam was arrested?" Akarsh laughed. "Is this an interrogation or a family visit?" "Just answer," Ariv said, voice colder now. Akarsh leaned in slightly. "I was at the docks, finalizing a grain deal with foreign merchants." "Want me to prove it?" He pulled out a signed agreement. Kayan would later verify it, forged, of course. But at that moment, Ariv knew one thing: the war for truth had just begun. And it wasn't just justice on the line now, it was the very soul of the kingdom. The winds shifted in the kingdom of Visira. Truth had broken free, but the storm it stirred threatened to destroy everything King Ariv had built. Prince Akarsh, cloaked in charm but masked with deceit, was now the center of suspicion. Kayan's investigations confirmed the grain deal was forged, and whispers linked Akarsh to secret meetings with foreign envoys and bribes that funded treason. But the kingdom still loved him. He had charisma, a legacy of valor, and the bloodline of kings. Accusing him would divide the realm. Punishing him could ignite civil unrest. Ariv stood at the edge of a cliff one morning, overlooking the valley below. Alone with his thoughts, he asked himself a question no king ever wants to ask. Can I bring justice to my own blood? Suddenly, he felt a presence behind him. It was Lena, the servant girl once falsely accused, now a symbol of hope among the people. "Your Majesty," she said softly, "I've seen what truth costs, but I've also seen what silence destroys." Her words hit deep. That night, Ariv summoned the full royal court. The chamber was tense. He stood, golden crown in hand, and addressed the court not as a ruler, but as a man. "I was raised to believe that loyalty was everything. But I've learned something greater, that truth is loyalty to the people." He turned to Akarsh. "Cousin, I loved you like a brother. But love cannot blind justice." He revealed the forged documents, the network of bribes, the betrayal that bled into the roots of power. Gasps filled the hall. Some nobles shouted. Others bowed their heads. Akarsh was stripped of his title, not with anger, but with sorrow. He would face trial, not in secret, but before the very people he had betrayed. The kingdom held its breath. But then something beautiful happened. The people didn't riot. They rose. Because for the first time in generations, a king had chosen truth over blood. Justice over comfort. Right over easy. And in that choice, he didn't just save the crown. He transformed it. Final life lesson. Justice isn't about who you love, it's about what you stand for. A kingdom, a family, or a life built on silence will always crumble. But truth, though heavy, builds foundations that never fall.